In 7.4, we're going to look at applications for cooling. The first being endurance performance. Endurance performance is where we really see the effect of heat stress impair athlete performance. So using cooling, pre-cooling, whether that's ice vest, cold water immersion if possible, ice slurry ingestion, great ways to help buffer that heat stress gain and enhance endurance as best as possible. That can also be done per cooling if possible, and peripheral cooling during transitions or rest wherever possible is recommended. Now, there has been some research showing positive benefits. You're going to see this really is going to come down to the degree of cooling that can be applied, as well as the degree of heat stress the athlete is under. So, huge variation in efficacy, but strong literature on effectively cooling pre and per for endurance performance enhancements. Into strength and power output, this is a little bit different. There is still going to be question of what is the environmental heat risk, as well as what is the metabolic heat demand. So the total volume completed in the activity. The advantage with strength and power, a lot of these high intensity efforts do have breaks. So you can implement cooling either into the environment, such as airflow, as well as in between activities, in between rest breaks, and program it and try and keep the body in optimal core temperature range as long as possible. When it is really high intensity, so peak strength, peak power, that does have very high metabolic demand. So there's no doubt that there is a threat of heat stress from maximal lifting. Team sports activities, these are very obvious, and this was shown strongly in module 6.1, where in intermittent sports, most 88% in the systematic review found some degree of hyperthermia. So it's very, very common to see. So cooling before, during, and after, if necessary, all strongly recommended. Performance outcomes, if you can mitigate heat stress, you can mitigate the rise in core temperature, you can increase endurance training capacity, as well as just the ability to be in peak performance for longer. Post-exercise recovery, this is where it gets a little bit nuanced. As far as exertional heat illness is concerned and athlete health, you want to be able to maximize cooling as fast as possible if hyperthermia is an issue. If you are looking merely for recovery and that is not an issue, then there is some caution with extreme cooling, such as cold water immersion and blunting the inflammation. Contrast therapy is potentially a great way. That's beyond the scope of this course, but there are a lot of great tools out there and a lot of great sources to study. As far as that physiological adaptation, mixed evidence, very contextual. Again, not something we're going to talk about too closely in this section. So the four main applications for cooling, there's endurance, strength, team sports, and recovery. Recommendations on what type of cooling to do. These are of the traditional cooling modalities, what the goals are. This is just a real quick eye chart to summarize what we've talked about in this section.